Spring is here and it's time for you to get your vegetables and plants started from seed. And I'm gonna share a hack for each step of the process so that way you're gonna have something from planting all the way through getting ready for transplant. Now, it's possible that you took the easy route and just bought some plants from the nursery. If that's you, at the end of this video, I'm gonna share a hack on how you can help your plants to succeed once you've already got them planted in the ground. Let's get busy. Okay, the first hack when it comes to starting and planting your seeds really is something that a lot of us avoid because it requires a little bit of preparation, but I'm going to share with you two things of preparation that are going to go a long way in terms of making this a success for you. First is using some sort of spreadsheet to take and catalog the types of seeds you have. If you got them all in one place, you're going to be able to see the type of plant, the variety of the plant, you're going to be able to see the year that the plant, those particular seed packet was created for, so that way you know if you're dealing with older seeds, you're going to be able to see what seasons they're generally going to be planted. You're going to be able to see the amount of germination time, and those are all going to be helpful for your planning. So using a spreadsheet, and I'm going to make a copy of this available in the description below, is really a main step. So that way the next season you're able to go through just a list and look at everything you've got instead of having to open up all your stuff. The second half of this hack, this organizing hack, has to do with seed management. You're going to have seeds that usually carry over from season to season, and oftentimes you end up with some sort of bag like this, and you know, you just end up having this big tangled mess. I want to give you another option that's kind of popular. You may have seen it before, and that is using something like this photo organizer. These containers are made to store photographs and kind of archive them, and they open up and they, you're able to store old photographs in there. But we found that it works really, really well for organizing seeds from season to season. This way, rather than just having a big tangled mess of just seed packets everywhere, we're able to grab, let's say, sunflower. We want to see what we have for sunflower, and so we can open that up, pull out the different sunflower cultivars that we want to grow that season and put those back and keep them all organized. Nice thing is if you've got something with larger seeds like peas or something, you can just expand it, have them go in 2 or 3 containers, and so this has worked really well for us. Okay, let's move on to the next hack. Okay, so you've got the plants that you want to grow that season, and then you've got your space, but how do you arrange what gets planted where? What should be planted next to each other? Rather than trying to figure all of this out on your own, we have turned to a site called growveg.com, and that has worked really well. We've got around 900 square feet of planting space that we've got to wrap our heads around, and so having something where we're able to use this site to not only lay the stuff out, but also be able to click on detailed information of each type of plant, look at companion planting. That's so helpful in knowing what to plant next to other things, what's going to not be helpful, what's going to actually be detrimental. And so rather than trying to just guess something, we were able to create this like layout over here on GrowVeg, print it out, and this gives me an idea of exactly what we're planting where this season. And so I really recommend using something like this. Something that's really cool about GrowVeg is you can also print out just a planting list. So that way I can, rather than having to look at it visually like this, I can look at just a list of the plants and how many of them we're planting, so that way I know how many to start, how many to sow directly in the ground, etc. This is really cool. Hey, this is a lot of planting, and right now all the grow beds are bare. So that you don't miss how this turns out, how it gets from paper into the ground, be sure to subscribe, and so that way you can follow along as we grow throughout the season. Okay, let's get on to the next hack. Planting plants is kind of intuitive. You take a seed from a plant that you see growing in the ground, you take and put it in the ground, and another plant comes up, and then you harvest it and eat it. So this next hack, even though you may have seen it done before, is a little bit counterintuitive, and that is to start your plants indoors. Starting your plants indoors has a few benefits, especially if you're in colder climates. When you plant something out in the ground, if it springs up and then a frost comes through, it's going to kill what you've planted. And yet, putting your stuff in the ground after frost has passed often delays your growing season, especially in areas not like Southern California where we can kind of plant any time of year, but in other states, Minnesota, for example, you guys have, poor guys, such a short planting window. You really need to be able to maximize all your growing during that time. And so starting your plants indoors allows you to get those plants to kind of a running start. The minute the last frost passes, you're able to take and put that thing in the ground. And so that saves you a bunch of time, so it's not as weather dependent. You really have plants that are ready to be planted at the optimal time for them to survive, which is ideal because dead plants don't feed you very well. Like I mentioned, living here in Southern California, we can plant outdoors for much of the year, but there are some plants that are going to respond better to being out there in the open when it's actually warm. Some of those hot varieties like peppers and tomatoes and things. And so having those things started indoors is ideal for us. So that way they even get a heads up and a running start before they get planted outdoors. Now, planting indoors can happen in a bunch of places. You could put it in a garage. I've seen people start it in a closet with a light. Here we're just using it in our shed. Look at this. There's luggage over there. There's a cooler over there, some golf clubs in the back, and a bunch of chairs. Really, anywhere you want to start your plant is fine. There's one secret to this, which a lot of growers don't know and haven't recognized, and that is the idea of successive planting. You've heard me talk a lot on this channel about successive ripening when it comes to fruit trees, and that's why it's nice to be able to plant multiple fruit trees that have differing harvesting seasons in the same spot. So where you'd have one plant, one tree that gives one type of apple in that same space, maybe you've got 3 different kinds of apples, well, 4 different kinds of apples, so that way you have apples over a longer growing and harvesting season. The same concept kind of applies here when it comes to starting your plants indoors. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you've got your one set of plants that's out there, you've waited all winter, the frost has passed, you've put them in the ground. Well, while those are growing, normally what happens is, those plants are harvested and then you take them out and now you've got this bare land until you start more plants to put in that space. Well, what if when this batch was done, you harvest it, you pull it out of the ground and immediately can put in another batch of vegetables to take its place? So that way you're getting a lot more productivity out of that soil. You're able to rotate some things around. You're able to just follow up, and so you get a lot more sustained harvest by doing successive planting. But the way that you do that is by starting your seeds and plants elsewhere, not in the soil right that minute. You've got them started here in the shed. And that way when these are ready, these come out and these can go immediately in their place. Starting your plants indoors requires them to be in some sort of container. So I'm going to show you in the next hack what's worked best for me. We're out here working hard to get this cleared out while the seeds are started and they're germinating. We're clearing out all of these weeds. Hey, a reminder, I answer all of your questions on Instagram at The Busy Gardeners. So head over there, follow me there, and ask any questions you've got. I'd be happy to interact with you. All right, let's get on to the hacks. Okay, you've got your stuff selected, you're ready to get started, and now you need to actually put your seeds into some sort of container. You've got to start them. And oftentimes what you'll do is just grab any kind of container. I've seen them in plastic pots, I've seen them in egg cartons and in little milk cartons, all sorts of stuff. Fabric pots, clay pots, whatever. The idea is, though, you need something to be able to hold the starting medium that you've got. And I think the biggest hack that I can offer is for you to get something that works just like this. When you plant in some sort of container, especially a round container, you can create a situation of what's called being root bound or pot bound, and that's where the roots will start following the shape of the pot and they'll go in a circular fashion a lot of the time. And the issue there is that when you take them out of the pot and put them in the ground, now those things want to continue, those roots continue in that shape. So in that case, you then have to break those roots apart, which can stress the plant. This hack solves a few of the problems, and I want to share what that is. I'm going to put a link to all of this stuff in the description so you'll be able to get any of this stuff. These and these and these share a couple of characteristics that I want to point you to. First of all, you notice that each of the cells is square. So any of that natural curving isn't going to happen with something like this. Because it's square, it's going to dissuade the plant from doing that sort of thing. Another thing that might not be as evident to you is that there are these little slits that are in here. And those slits around allow air to go in, and that's called air pruning. A plant will naturally not want to develop roots where it's going to come in contact with air. So that's going to keep the roots of the plant in the soil and not searching out or not kind of following the shape of that thing, because the minute it starts going around, it's going to run into air at each of these corners. Finally, one thing that I like about this, that I don't like about this, is that this is solid in the bottom. And this, I don't know if you can even see it, but it's totally open. So when you're ready to take those plants out and transplant them, you're able to push these out by putting your finger in there, the plant will pop out, and you create as little disturbance as possible. So I think this is a really successful and wonderful thing that I've enjoyed using. It's made it really easy to transplant. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, you've got your soil in here, you've got your seeds in here, they've been put in here, and then you want to bring them indoors and you're going to want them to grow. Now, indoors, we kind of intuitively get that plants need some sort of light in order to grow, so having some sort of growing lights makes a lot of sense. But plants need three things in order for that seed to germinate. They need water, they need air, and they need heat. And plants are usually going to germinate best between 70 degrees and 90 degrees. The problem is that most homes do not really exceed that. You're usually not heating your home to 84 degrees. And so we make use of kind of a little trick, a hack, and that is the seed mat. And so what this mat is it's a flat mat that lays here, and it has coils that are running through it. It has a thermostat that knows when to kick on and kick off. And the way it knows is because it has this probe, and this probe gets put down into the soil of the plant that you're wanting to, to measure the temperature of. And you can set it. I had usually mine set around 75 degrees, so that way it's consistent. So when the thermostat detects that the temperature has gone below that, turns the heat back on to bring that temperature up, so you get a really consistent growth. And so that speeds this whole thing up. The nice thing about this is that the air temperature in here is like 65 degrees, too cold to really effectively and consistently germinate. And so by raising that heat level, that's going to enable for me to get a higher level of germination rate, and it's going to start those plants a lot faster than if they didn't have that heat available to them. And here's a little caveat, a little pro tip, and that is once your plants have germinated, once they've begun growing, you want to shut the heat mat off. After a certain point, it actually contributes to some problems for plants if that heat is continually applied to the root structure. So once those plants have germinated, pull it off the heat, but this hack will get you on starter. Okay, so we've taken you from organizing your seeds all the way through what type of containers to put them in and how to heat them up and get them sprung and ready to go. I'm going to show you one more tip outside. This is like the bonus tip, especially for those of you who just bought plants from the nursery. So whether you've bought plants from the nursery or have grown yours up to seedling height and you're putting those in the ground, I'm going to show you one way to protect them and jumpstart them. Let's go. Okay, the bonus hack for getting plants started to success is this stuff. This easy straw functions as a mulch. The same principles that apply to fruit trees and why mulch is so beneficial apply to plants as well. Some of the benefits are they keep the soil moisture consistent, they keep the temperatures down, so that way as it's getting baked by the sun, it isn't baking all of that soil. It's going to support all of that. Stuff growing beneath the surface, those mycorrhizae and the bacteria and all of those things that keep the soil vibrant and growing and breaking down those nutrients for you. So using something like a mulch for a plant, like I've got this recently pruned kale plant here, so that way it kind of overwintered and it's starting to put out some leaves. Having some sort of mulch is going to be really beneficial. Now, whereas we use wood chips up in the orchard with the fruit trees, they're very long lasting and they just sit on top of the surface. Inside our garden, things are going to be tilled into the soil over time. And so using something like this weed-free straw mulch is going to be really beneficial. It's going to provide a lot of the same benefit, but it's also going to break down much more quickly than wood chips are. And it also isn't going to have that negative thing where, a long story, but wood chips essentially, when they're tilled into the soil, will leach nitrogen from the soil instead of adding to it. Long story, this won't do that same thing. So this type of straw mulch is going to be applied just at the base of the plant, around it, essentially where like the drip line of the plant is going to be, and that's going to provide the most benefit. Nice thing is this type of straw has a tack in it, so as it gets wetted down, it's going to actually kind of bind to itself and it's not going to blow away very easily. If it was out in the wind, this stuff just blows away quickly, but at the base of a plant, it's going to stay a lot more consistently. So this is going to help this kale plant this season. Something mulch also does is helps to suppress weeds, and as we've been fighting the weeds behind us, my family can attest that suppressing any kind of weeds is always a plus. So applying this in maybe about a half inch to an inch thick is ideal. So I actually did a video with Kevin Espiritu of Epic Gardening on how to start plants and his process on that. I'm going to link to that right here, so go check that out after this. Well, whether you're starting one plant for your garden or 500, until next time, stay busy.